Before we dig in, a quick thank you to the sponsors ready to grow with the Soil Sisters. Fed and Happy is the official nutrient provider for the Soil Sisters projects because we believe in the Fed and Happy philosophy that if the worms won't eat it, neither will we. And Tejas Tonic is the official beverage of the Texas Soil Sisters. We especially love that the hemp for Tejas Tonic is organically farmed in the Texas Hill Country, with farms in both Dripping Springs and Lukenbach, Texas. The Soil Sisters podcast is powered by B&P Electric. Whether you're building, remodeling, installing low-voltage landscape lighting, or in need of an inspection, B&P is your Central Texas electrical contractor. Find links to our sponsors in the podcast show notes or head over to txsoilsisters.co. You're listening to the Soil Sisters podcast, where we dig in on family farming and ranching, regenerative agriculture, healthy living, and planting seeds in our community. We invite you to listen, subscribe, and grow with the Soil Sisters. I'm Joanna Newting, joined by my blood, soul, and soil sister, Crystal. Welcome to the show. Hey, sis.
Hi, Sissy. How are you?
I'm excellent. We've had some technical difficulties. We are on location shooting today's Soil Sisters podcast at Fallen Oak Mycology. Our friends, Josh Googins and Zahia Tawil, are here to talk with us and nerd out on fungi.
I love it.
Hi, guys. Thanks for having us.
Hello.
Thanks for being patient while I went through some SD card madness. So I like the vibe here. Y'all all feel easy breezy. And you and the Soil Sisters are going to be collaborating on a few things. So instead of me giving a super brief intro of you, I want you, Josh, you can start us off. Introduce yourself to the Soil Sisters audience, and Zahia, you can follow up.
Awesome.
All right. Yeah. Thanks a lot for listening, everybody that's listening. My name is Josh Googins. I grew up in Austin, mostly as a musician at first, but I took a liking kind of at the same time as music to fungi and really the sustainable agricultural movement. I would say regenerative agriculture is another new kind of modern word to put towards it, but essentially just building systems. I think the engineer side of my brain merges with the creative side of my brain when I think of agricultural systems. So fungus, although I tried a lot of different things like brewing beer, kombucha, general maintenance of animals like goats and chickens, mushrooms kind of have always been the thing to stand out. For me, one, they're cool and rare, and at that time, I guess 15 years ago, or maybe a little more, they weren't as ubiquitous as right now. So right now it's a great timing. It's as I've come into the ability to kind of exercise all of that creativity, it's being received really well by the world. And so, yeah, it's pretty cool. I basically just did an internship in Austin when I was 20. Then I moved to Maui and did some agricultural kind of woofing, which is traveling as a farmer.
I love woofers. I had
Me
some fun
too.
experiences with that organization in Northern California.
Yeah, and that ended up being my first mushroom farm called Maui Mushrooms in 2014. And that kind of ran its course, and I learned a lot and did a little more woofing, traveling, farming, etc., and then settled back down in my hometown of Austin and started Googins Biotech LLC. But that was more to get into this kind of thing that we're going to be talking about today. But Fallen Oak Mycology is the fungal kind of products,
Yes.
brand of that, and met Zahia along the way.
Awesome. Zahia?
Hi, everyone. My name is Zahia Tawil. I'm also born and raised in Austin, Texas. I left, however, when I was just 17 and moved to California for college. And I went to the University of Southern California, where I studied biomedical engineering, and I received both a bachelor's and master's in that. And I initially did that because I was really interested in dreams and I wanted to help better the medical field. But throughout that journey, I found myself actually working in fire protection after college for a company that I still love and respect. And I learned so much through that, even though I felt like it was so far off my path. And at that time, I was living in San Diego and took a garment construction class just for free through community college, like continuing education program. And through that, I had a teacher that spoke about, well, I should say professor, because she has very high credentials. She spoke about basically mushroom leather, which is kind of a misnomer, and we can get into that later. But the idea of sustainable textile products using different methods than petroleum products or leather.
I love that.
And that kind of first sparked my interest, but I continued in just my career path and I ended up working in the medical device field doing sales. And while I loved the impact I was making directly on the patients, I felt like there was a much darker side to it that was eating away at me and just didn't align with my morals and ethics. And it just wasn't fulfilling me in the way that I wanted to be. And so I had a personal experience where I decided, you know what, I'm going to leave this and I want to find the intersection between all of my interests. So coming from biomedical engineering, the sort of chemistry and science side and ergonomics, and then this love for textiles and garment construction and sustainability. I actually come from on my dad's side rug merchants, which I learned in the last few years. So I feel like the textiles are somewhere in there. But I moved back to Austin, I think the end of 2021. And shortly after, I reached out to Josh later the next year in 2022 and kind of told him where I'm at, my interests. And we were like, hey, let's just collaborate. He had already, been going with Fallen Oak, and he graciously allowed me to join the company and just kind of learn all sorts of stuff with the idea that, we still have lots of goals that we're working towards. And we want to push just fungus as a whole and help show the world all the amazing applications and make some money along the way to help fuel these other dreams of ours that hopefully ultimately will lead to sustainability, efficiency, and just a better quality of life for everyone.
Yes.
I just want to climb over the table and hug you right now. You're so amazing. Yes,
Thank you.
I love all of this.
Yes.
So the fact that I didn't know that you had worked for the fire retardant, whatever company, what was it called?
So I worked for Centos. They're known for, their uniform service, but they have 3 divisions. So rental, which is uniforms and their bread and butter, first aid, which are the first aid kits. I think we might have one here actually. And then fire protection, which we kind of joke, we used to joke in that industry, it's like the Wild West still. It's a lot of mom and pop shops, but it means like fire extinguishers, kitchen suppression systems, sprinkler systems, alarm systems. And it's a really interesting industry. It's very blue collar in some ways, but it's something where you don't think about it until you need it. So one of our selling points were exit signs. People get trampled really easily. It's not funny at all, but
well, and the reason I bring that up is because that's one of the most amazing things about hemp as a building material is that it is flame retardant. Like it will not burn. And so, this idea of taking mushrooms and hemp and humans that care about reviving our ecosystems and our community, there's just so much cool stuff that we can do when we focus on nature.
Yes.
So we've talked regenerative ag, renewable energy, recycling, fashion. Where do y'all want to jump in first?
I guess like hemp, really. I mean, how does that relate to what maybe us specifically are doing? It's kind of, I think to a lot of people, the only correlation between mushrooms and hemp is smoking while you're tripping.
Psychotropics.
But there's a lot more that I kind of would love to just kick off because to me, it's amazing to be able to talk to you guys because I was told to go to that farm convention that I met you guys at when I felt like I was just too busy and it was maybe a distraction. And I was like, man, I don't know if I can do that. But Alan was just like, man, you just need to start doing these kinds of things. And this is the result, because before I started with this mushroom business, I was very into kind of all things in this vein.
Yeah.
But again, that was, 17 years ago or so. And it's like, there wasn't as much vocalization, I think, maybe there was, but it was just more buried. And I actually was trying to get my father on board with some of this then. And he was just like, whatever, man. I mean, sure, sounds cool. But I was like, no, I'm serious. Like there's so much you can do with this stuff. And it's only just being researched. And if you got good at it, you could make good money with it and it be influential. So hemp was a big one that I kind of just was on the back burner forever until going and being like, I'm going to go into this industrial hemp talk. And I saw that you guys had just kind of put together a lot of material and put in your research and found like supply chain and all this stuff that I felt was maybe lacking 17 years ago.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
And just to see that the resurgence of that is becoming more popular made me motivated to be like, I honestly was sitting in there and I was thinking to myself, like, holy shit, you know what? I'm about to start growing hemp.
Yes, you are.
I just kinda
I
knew.
love it.
I'm like, man, you know what? I bet you I'm going to do this.
Yeah. I love that.
Mhm.
And, that's part of the thing is in order to get more people to do it, we just have to go out and show the supply chain is here. The seed is almost here.
Yeah.
I'm plotting to get us access to some of the first Texas heat and drought tolerant seed that's available, where we have a year, everybody, we're prepping our soils, getting it together. And then the following year, let's plant it and show people, showcase this and have a show and tell effort, because that's how farmers work.
Yes.
They
Yeah.
need to see somebody else doing it. They need to see their neighbor doing it. They need to see that you use all the same tools that we
Mhm.
already use. And I'm not needing to learn something different,
Exactly.
just applying the same principles in different ways.
Yeah.
And the beautiful thing here is your waste. We just drove by that trailer and I was like, oh, like, yes, I can't wait to use that.
Yeah.
That is what rolls in and begins
Right.
to rehab the soil to grow the hemp.
Mhm.
Yeah, I think that's like the reason that I kind of put hemp on the back burner for me was just I didn't know enough about the supply chain, and I knew more about fungus, and I figured, well, if I can meet in the middle,
Mhm.
Yeah.
and once I get to the point, it's literally exactly how it's happened. It's
Mhm.
just what's incredible is like to the point where we have enough of this material that it actually makes a difference
Right.
on a few acres,
Yeah.
Yeah.
and that we can grow into that. That was the goal for a long time. It's like, well, you just need to start cranking out substrate. If
Yes.
you're even going to try and experiment with the waste, it needs to
Mhm.
be a lot of volume.
Yeah.
And that means your business has to be successful to be able to sustainably produce that volume
Yes.
on a
Mhm.
financial level.
Mm-hmm.
Well, even to add to that, at our last facility, well, we are organic certified, and part of that is a requirement to improve just the space around us, whether it's a tiny little patch or you have an apiary or whatever. But we did sort of experiment with some of our waste in this little patch, and things were growing like crazy.
Mhm.
Mhm.
And it wasn't even necessarily purposeful, but we were like, wow, like this is just one
Yes.
seed to start or one drop in the bucket.
Yes.
The whole seeing is believing really for so many people, where we can talk about the chemistry of the textbooks all day long, but when you put it into practice, it's so amazing to see and
Exactly.
inspiring.
Exactly. And that's the community.
Yeah.
Just that little bit, just adding community to the
Mhm.
soil, which is what the fungus are,
Uh-huh.
so that they go around and communicate and work with things and bring it back and have
Yeah.
this for themselves and share that with them. And then it just, this beautiful little spot that you didn't even mean to.
Yeah.
You just added some community.
Yeah.
Super fun.
You have something?
Well, no,
Would you
I
like
was
to?
just going to prod you to go a little bit deeper on that. So you both are super intelligent and you've already connected a lot of dots. So I don't know if we want to talk about your land. And
Sure.
for me, I believe show and tell. We did it in preschool, we did it in kindergarten, and to this day, I believe it's the best way for people to learn.
Yes.
So the idea that I've been working through is how can we create community around regenerative agriculture in healing the land and creating a local economy.
Mhm.
So where we're talking about this bigger supply chain, for farmers that are growing 25, 50 acres plus of industrial hemp,
Mhm.
where there is a large supply chain. There's also these little niche supply chains with growing hemp where you can work with local manufacturers that are making rugs or textiles or people that want to grow hemp to then turn it into building materials. And we have so many natural builders in this area. I want to jumpstart that economy of us having these small little handshake agreements before it starts. Like, hey, here's this project. These people are wanting to, build a church
Yeah.
and they're growing hemp, but we're all new at this. And so it may be a 6-foot crop instead of a 12-foot crop. And they may need 8 more acres of hemp. Are you
Yeah.
willing to grow that? And what would you sell it for? And then, us being able to just show our own community that there's a viable market for it. And then at that point, it can organically grow to where we are affecting global manufacturing, or, who cares about global manufacturing? The state of Texas, the
Yes.
United States of America,
Yeah.
Yes.
being able to truly impact our construction industry, the fuel industry, auto parts and auto manufacturing industry. So, us doing these little experiments where it seems like this isn't a big deal, I think there's not anybody else doing it right now and really showcasing it. So I think a little bit of effort on our part can be super impactful for our state.
Yeah.
And we're going to impact microclimates
Yeah.
around and have a visual, a mind-blowing visual. It's like the first time I put worm castings on my garden.
Yeah.
What? And it's just like, oh my gosh. Like this whole time, you've been doing nothing. Like I've fed you nothing. Then it like ding, some lights come on. So I think that is super important for everyone around each of the little spaces that is able to come by. And the number of farmers that I'm like, oh, have talked to me and said, oh, I hear y'all are growing hemp. How's that going?
Yeah.
And so just to be able to say, you know what, let me show you. You
Yeah.
can go here, you can go here, you can go here.
Yeah.
And this is what we're doing.
You have to kind of go out on a limb to
Mhm.
kickstart something that you believe is gonna has its own momentum built into it. It just needs someone to go out on that limb. And I think like what's cool and interesting about these things to me is that they seem to be keystone elements to an economy and to an ecology, where
Mhm.
fungus and things like this are not only popular right now, but I think what the best investment of time and energy and ingenuity is into something that's not really just popular because it's hot, but it's
Yes.
popular because it's a keystone element to humanity.
Yeah.
And
Yes.
so like that, I think it's daunting for a lot of people to hear that
Mhm.
and then be like, yeah, well, I hear cure-alls all the time on any channel you listen to, someone's got the answer,
Exactly.
right? So, but I think with the right amount of research and like you said, kind of not even research, just starting to put the thing into play,
Yep.
is just going to demonstrate it rather than talk about
Yeah.
it. And that's like the exciting part,
Yeah.
because as you were saying with building, I just think like the history of it obviously points to how much of a cornerstone, maybe the word is, of humanity that hemp is,
Yeah.
but to ecology, fungus is as well.
Yep.
And hemp needs better ecology to exist and be better for the person that's cultivating it, higher quality. And as over the past 100-something years or more, since the Industrial Revolution and since petroleum became a very heavily used thing, I think it was revolutionary, obviously, for a long time. But we've also gotten to the point where we've become a little irresponsible with how much it gets in our soil and things like that. Just because we had that quick hack, that technology that helped us to mass produce. And now it's kind of backing up and saying, okay, we're like reassessing, like how does that impact our soil and our quality, et cetera, and what do we do to remediate that? And that's where fungus can come in.
Yeah.
But in conjunction with hemp, fungus and hemp together complement each other.
Yeah.
Yes.
And so those together as a system seem to be the future of humans getting to know nature again,
Yes.
but with the level of technology that we've been allowed to accomplish.
That is literally, I'm like, they took us away from nature, like cut
Yeah.
all of that. So we focus on technology. And so great, we have grown technologically, but now we have to get back and come at this natural thing.
Yeah.
Mother Nature knows what she's doing. And that's literally the mushrooms and the fungal networks and the communication in the soil with the earth, the good organic biological systems of this earth, that any alien that comes to the earth, they're not looking for technology. They're looking for biology.
Yeah.
You know,
Something
so-
funny, before we started this, we were chatting about like when things are easy and they just flow in life and it feels right. But I think since the Industrial Revolution and just in our society, there's so much consumerism and planned obsolescence, and it feels wrong to us because it's not going with the flow of nature. And I think there there's been a movement, and it's not just hot movement of like trending, but a movement getting back to our roots, no pun intended,
Yes.
and kind of like finding sustainable ways that can really help our problems, but also find a more natural way of living
Right.
and using the things around us to do that.
Yes.
So much in the world now in technology, they are just mirroring nature.
Yeah.
Yes.
So it's like, okay,
Right.
Crystal and I, we call it the high level basics.
Mhm.
The mycelial network is the network
Mhm.
that
That is
the
the
World
high
Wide
level
Web was
basic.
built
Yeah.
on. So like,
Yes.
Yeah.
let's just go back to nature's World Wide Web.
Yes.
Yeah, and it can't help but be the same. I mean, I think like I'm also a strong believer in that things just are the way they are because they can't help but be it. Like entropy will make sure that things fall apart over time and then they'll reorganize into something
Yeah.
different. And I think like the desire for us is to recollect the stray parts that we see
Mhm.
and make them be whole again, only for those to then reform in a different way later. So it's I guess all of that to say not everything is lost, not everything is wrong,
Yeah.
but like where are we going now?
Yeah.
Well, and we
Yeah.
already know that we've gone quite off course. Like, you don't need a degree in rocket science to figure that out.
Yeah.
And I also want to add the third, a trifecta in our holy high level basics. And we were talking to John Drumgoole on the radio show yesterday, and we were talking about algae.
Yeah. Algae's
That's
amazing.
a big
Mhm.
one.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
So,
Yeah.
and I also have an algae solution in our neighborhood too. I mean,
Uh-oh.
seriously, all this stuff,
Yeah.
guys,
It's all
is,
coming
That's
it
together.
is
cool.
coming together.
Yeah.
And the more that we say it's coming together, because I've been saying this literally almost every show, I'm like, can you believe the people that are coming together? It's compounding because
Uh-huh.
you get what you focus on,
Yeah.
and what you focus on expands. So it's just like, yes, it is all coming together.
I love that. Fractals.
Yeah.
Fractals are huge.
So like for Zahia and I, when we talked to you guys last week, it was interesting because I think we're both arriving at a point that's similar with looking at fungus, and we're at where we are now is an amazing building that we've recently gotten into, and it has the potential to propel us into a great mode of business with when it comes to Fallen Oak. But I think like as we just expressed when we were kind of introducing ourselves, is like there's more to the story, and we want to make sure that this is a secure place for everyone that works here and for ourselves as a time investment and money investment that can also feed us whatever waste we would like to work on
Yeah.
later, and provide good food. But there's so much more to explore, and like I think that the synergy between the two, as we've just discussed, of hemp and fungus, is just undeniable. So the interest really lies like what's the first mode of attack, as it were, or some other more pleasant word towards hemp.
Engagement.
Yeah, getting into it, and I think like the instinct for me before was to just look at it as a bioremediative agent that can then still be sold by the person that's remediating their soil.
Mhm.
So like they get something out of the process to show for the
Yeah.
process,
Yes.
Mhm.
which I think is a good way to do it.
Yes.
But they need to know some kind of form of where to go with it, and so those ideas still need to be fleshed out. And like you were saying, hemp building is a great thing because you can kind of compound your time and investment by improving the soil as well as the land that you're operating on.
Yep.
By developing a structure off of all or some of the
Mhm.
crop that you've made.
Well, and also you are, for the end user, you're cutting out so many risk factors. Like, you don't have to worry about your house burning down. You don't have to worry about getting termites. You don't have to worry about spending a ton of money on air conditioning because the house breathes and it stays at an ambient temperature.
Yeah.
It's actually great for people with allergies.
Wow.
So,
You're not breathing in all the chemicals that they put in everything that they
Mhm.
For the
in
mold
the
that's
house.
growing in the
Yeah.
wood.
and
Mhm.
wherever
Exactly.
you are in your house, you're grounding.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah, like this one wild concept that I was trying to work toward, but I think it's the answer to the process of getting there kind of is locked somewhere in this type of conversation. Is just like I was visiting Mike Reynolds in Taos, New Mexico, which is where the Earth ships are. I could sense in him that he's been doing this for so long. He definitely has so much faith in that process, but he's just waiting for the next thing. He's like, here's a good template. I've worked. This is my life's work. You can ask me about it, but you go do it. Go do something. We would ask him very specific questions like, can we do this? Can we build a mycology lab in it? How do I pull more cool air at a higher velocity through a filter if it's passive? He's like, well, just make the front hotter and bigger and make this back colder and smaller, and then you can shove more air through a filter. He's like, you just got to think about it. And it kind of made me realize like we're all not even taking our creative license as much as we totally can. And
Yes.
so with hemp, it's another part to that I don't even think was in the Earthship like ethos of thinking as much. It could be. I might be wrong, but I don't think so. And with the adobe structures and hemp and our knowledge on how much resources it takes to cool down a structure in the South, that became apparent. Like I think I touched on when we're in huge metal buildings in Texas, and it's like this is the only choice of building I can think of that I know of. Like where are these other templates of structure and how are they permitted? And those things are not really. There are a lot of people that are like Simon and maybe some of the people that that could definitely touch on this and answer the questions more. But for me, designing a space to work in with the materials that you are growing around you, and then using that space, like a mycological space, to then turn back into the soil that's around that space that you're creating is the way to build forward,
I
those
love
designs.
Me too. I love it.
Yeah.
Well, and the energy of everything that you're working with and creating. And then that's like I've brought up before, the lean startup thing, where you're just having an experience, you're testing it, you're reconfiguring and doing it again. I mean, and it's having this kind of conversation, growing these different things, involving all the parts of nature into it. It's just like we heal each other, we heal the land, we create something that feeds the community and, provides safe housing for people. And it all feels so good. And it's like, this is exactly what we're supposed to be doing. And Crystal will often say, if it feels good, do it. And if she's not feeling it, she's going to sit down.
I love that. This is the pain point is the solution.
Yeah.
It's like the minute you run into a frustration, say, yes, okay, let me just sit with this for a second, because there is a solution that's like, hey, me over here. But I'm focused in another way. I feel the disconnect between what I'm doing and what I want to do. So the relaxing breathing, and then all of a sudden inspiration strikes, the phone rings, you hear something on the radio. I mean, it literally is, the universe is like, I will tell you any way that you will listen.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you in every way. And whichever one you pick up is the one you pick up. But just knowing that, taking that time to like,
be
listen.
open. Yeah.
And then, oh my gosh, so this is what I love and I'm super excited about, because you can't frustrate me. I'm not going to be upset about anything. Like, I know there's a solution. And especially when I get upset, especially when my body reacts, I'm like, ooh, this is going to be good, because that is uncomfortable. It's intense or whatever it is. And so, like, allow yourself to be triggered with the solution. Like, oh, we're going somewhere.
So, one of the things that I love about having y'all's brains in this little melting pot of ideas with ours is that, you have to be very concise with the way you do things here. So us being able to set up an experiment and document things, like, how to do that. You have to do that. So us being able to take some of that structure that y'all can offer.
Yes.
Because sister and I are not that.
So good, though. It's perfect.
Probably the least in the company of someone who is as precise as what I'm saying is I'm fairly lackadaisical.
You're on our team.
Yeah, with what goes on. I mean, it's not that I think my experience gives me the edge to allow for me to get things done in a clean way. But
Yeah.
I definitely try to push it as much as I can to like bring mycology and the fungal community to less of a snooty, higher than thou level. Like I want it
Yeah.
to be more of a thing that
Yes.
people can understand, and so I don't want it to hold it as a carrot above
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. You have to be
others.
perfect.
You know, I want just people to understand the fundamentals, because if you do understand the fundamentals, then you can treat it like almost planting seeds like tomatoes. But
Yeah.
if, I guess without the fundamentals, though, things can get
Yeah.
sideways pretty quick
And
too.
that's experience. That's
Yeah.
you've put in the work. You've
Yeah.
put in the years of experience because in the beginning you had to follow all the very strict rules and you had to do it exactly right until you knew which rules you could push or bend or
Just
like
threw out
okay.
a bunch of mold.
Yeah.
A lot.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, and actually, since you brought that up, let's just talk a little bit about people that maybe wanted to grow mushrooms at home. Like, what does it take? How easy or difficult is it?
To start off right just from nothing is, I think, more difficult than most things that you would maybe be cultivating. Like orchids are, if you go to the store and get an orchid, it's probably a 60% chance that it's going to die.
Yeah.
I would say that if you start off with like your first time with growing fungus in your house, depending on whether you get a kit or not, if you're just starting from scratch, it's like an 85% chance that it's not going to work the first time. Just because it's just weird. It's just different. But you can pretty quickly find, like on the internet, there's a lot.
Mhm.
And we're trying to be more of a resource for that too, but just for making it easier.
Yeah.
But those are products that need to be developed. There are a lot of products out there.
The mushroom kits.
Mushroom kits, yeah. But I'm not sure that they really educate a person. They just kind of like, they
Put a
become a
syringe here.
handicap.
Yeah. Just
Yeah.
like stick it with a syringe, throw it in a closet. Y'all had commented on those neoprene patches. There's a lot of different barriers to entry, whether you want to start from a spore yourself in a little mono tube box and go up, or you can just buy a kit where you just cut it open and spray it. From just gardening in my own experience, you kind of see how, like we were talking about, weeds will come up so quickly or whatever. It's with fungus, they're so prolific and fast that I think it takes a little bit of experience to recognize whether you're growing the right thing.
Right.
Definitely things we've gone through, and we've tried some different unique species for trying to solve some solutions where, the books literally say it looks like contamination when it starts growing. And we're like,
Yeah.
yeah. And so there's definitely a learning curve. But I think that with this current movement, we've made it more accessible, or like the whole world has made it more accessible. But it's kind of like, where do you want to start? How It's like building blocks. Do you want to buy all these tools and try to do it from scratch? Or do you want to like get a block that's already inoculated and just grow it?
Yeah.
And then maybe the next time you inoculate it yourself
Exactly.
and keep going from there.
Even the terms like inoculate and all that stuff, I think, are kind of just different. Like all inoculation should be thought of as is planting seeds
Yeah.
in a
Right.
lot of ways.
Uh-huh.
And but it's important to distinguish it, because it's not really planting seeds either.
Well, it's kind
So-
of funny, through our organic certification, there's not even paperwork specific to mushrooms. We're like crossing out seeds and writing spores.
Yeah.
And then every time we have a new rep, we have to kind of explain to them the entire process in a way that makes sense from like a plant perspective. And I agree with the whole, like, we don't want it to be snooty. We use those terms because we don't want to confuse people, but we also want everyone to understand what's going on, and that you just kind of relax, they'll grow.
Yes.
Is there a certain species of mushroom that's best for newbies to grow?
Yeah, I think like oyster mushrooms are really easy.
Mhm.
Honestly, therapeutic mushrooms are pretty easy to grow. Other than those two, all the other ones are going to have a little more. Like, I mean, lion's mane is pretty easy to grow too, but it has different markers that are different. Like where like it kind of takes on that experience level where, like, if you watch oyster mushrooms or therapeutic mushrooms grow, they have a very distinct bright white mycelium, which is just easy to see if it's healthy or not. You can just like, very simple. But with lion's mane specifically, it's kind of more like what Zahia was saying, is that sometimes you need to start to gain experience with contaminants to understand whether or not to move forward with that batch that you're on, or
Yeah.
throw it out and start over. And a lot of times people don't know that. And so then they're just scaling up, ignorantly scaling up, putting money and time into things that are just going to fail.
Yeah.
And to spot it early would just be to learn from that mistake and not have to go all the way down the line.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, that the experience really just comes with spotting contamination.
And I'm sure YouTube
Um,
University is great for
Oh, yeah.
that. Watching
Totally.
a few videos, getting to see.
And all the OGs have written amazing books with lots of
Yeah.
OG, Paul Stamets, and there's many in the community where there's lots of books now, but some of the original textbooks have so much information, and we still refer back to those. Like the Mushroom Cultivator, I think we take that to most of our trade shows and things, and there are a lot of good simple resources out there where it's like you don't need all this fancy equipment, you don't need a perfectly sterile room. It's just using the tools around you and through experience and time.
Yeah, if we're talking about the technicalities of mushrooms, should I go further into that for just if someone's listening and they're curious about
Yeah.
cultivating? I think the basic principle is if you get a high efficiency particulate air filter, you're going to be miles ahead of if you don't have that. And you don't
Mhm.
have to go all out. Just get a small one. And really what I have tried to picture it as is if you're developing film, you need to be in a dark room.
Mhm.
That any light will contaminate the product that you're trying to make, and that is essentially what a high efficiency. It's a HEPA filter. Uh, it, a lot of times they're called flow hoods because you get a laminar flow. You get a flow of air that's concentrated in a straight area that's a working space for you.
Mhm.
And with the analogy of developing film, in a sense, that's like a dark space for you to work in. So if you go
Mhm.
outside of that space, you're essentially exposing it to light or contaminants,
Mhm.
in
Yeah.
this analogy. So to stay within that space and to be, but where this analogy breaks down is that light can also be all over your body and your hands and everything too.
Right.
So
Yeah.
you have to just kind of in a sense, I have always told people like it's almost like a superstition because
Mhm.
you can't see it. You
Right.
just
Yeah.
have to assume that it's there
Yeah.
because it is. And then if you just operate within that mindset, still expect 10% of what you do to go contaminated,
Yeah.
and then you're off and running.
Yeah.
That's pretty much it.
Yeah.
I love it.
But even then, contaminants can be soil remediators.
Yeah.
And I also work part-time in a nursery just because I love plants and want to learn more about them for fungus knowledge. And it's really interesting when I read these bags of soil or mycorrhizal fungi and see the species, because I think some of my peers, while they know a lot about soil health, I feel like I can recognize these species and I'm like, wow, that would be like a contaminant to us at Fallen Oak. But here it's like, yeah, throw it in your soil. It'll be great. And it does help. So it's not like completely wasted, even when you make mistakes. There are other ways to pivot and be agile.
Yes.
I
I
love
love it.
that.
And that's put it in your garden.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
There is no losers here.
hmm
Everybody wins.
That's what drew me to fungus as a whole, is that it really is one of the few examples on the planet of upcyclers where, of course, any large industry has its dark sides, which we're still working on as a company and an industry. But I think at the end of the day, our product is an upcycler and is helping take waste and make something new.
Yes. Love it.
I really do. And this facility, y'all have just recently moved in here, and it's amazing. I would love for y'all to talk a little bit about the art of farming a high commodity crop on the scale that you do and what that looks like.
Yeah, I mean, it's difficult to be honest. The last facility that we were in was a jump up. Mushrooms grow very quickly, and so you need to be able to scale up as quickly as they can.
Mhm.
And that's not easy. So I guess just as a backstory, that I started in a shipping container, and then maybe a year. Well, no, then the pandemic happened, and so I was pivoted. I couldn't really do food products, but after a few years, we were ready to scale way up. So we went into a 7,000 square foot building. And that was too much space for a little while. And then once we got some accounts, it was way too small.
Yeah.
Like
Mhm.
only like 2 accounts. We're like, oh man.
Yeah.
And then we're operating in hand built machinery
Mhm.
that we just built, just got going. And now we need to move up to a different thing, even
Wow.
bigger. And you're like, man, this is how are we gonna pay for that now? How are we gonna pay for those? Because we just got going here. We honestly need to get to another space. And so that's quickly what became kind of a pressure point. And it's like, you just need to go somewhere secure and big enough to grow into. And so that's this place where we are, and it's very well built. It's like state of the art in a lot of ways for mushroom cultivation, in that it's in the south. It's very difficult to manage temperature, and here it's easy to manage temperature. That's the main thing, because temperature for fungus particularly is everything. I mean, like, different fungus thrive in different temperature windows, and if your target fungus is not in that temperature window, it's going to have a really difficult time, and everything else is going to be real happy.
Yeah.
And it's going to beat it out.
It's going to be harder than it needs to be.
Yeah. So scaling up to that quickly to this level now requires technical know-how, even like electrical know-how, sometimes software know-how, and then the fundamentals of growing mushrooms, all the way to supply chain management. I mean, kind of like any business, but like I said, I think what's unique about fungus and is just it grows so fast. So if you're not up to snuff and you don't have it like dialed, it falls as quickly, it gets ruined as quickly as it could be good. So you just got to really, like, it's a shuffle.
Yeah.
You're constantly shuffling. And mushrooms are pretty perishable. It's like if you were a flower farm.
Yeah.
So what is that window for the shelf life of the mushrooms that you're producing?
Okay, so the shelf life of the mushrooms after they're produced is, we like to get them out of this facility within 5 days at the most, because they're going to sit on shelves for about a week after that. So a lot of times we harvest and then put them straight into boxes and ship a few days later. But we're also interested in managing that perishable nature by dehydrating it. So dehydration is really nice. It's a mechanism that we can use to kind of save some of the value. And it's also one of the parts of the mushroom industry that's kind of growing the fastest, which is supplements and things like that. So yeah, 5 days, 5 to 7 days, depending on the species.
You talking about dehydrating. Now I'm thinking, okay, so you have grocery customers, but do you also now have like supplement companies and things like that that are buying?
We're working on that. One thing that we've seen is that most of this, I don't want to say most, a lot of the supplements that you see in America use what they call myceliated grain. And you're really not getting the benefits
Exactly.
of the full spectrum mushroom. And so that's one of the values that we have here at Fallen Oak, is that we grow everything from spore all the way to fruit in-house. And we try to touch on the temperature at our last facility. Different species, it's like plants. When they're native to a tropical area, they want that humidity, that heat, versus like a different oyster mushroom that's from a different area. So with this facility, we have these different chambers where you can adjust all those things. To kind of get back to the supplements, like a full mushroom fruit has, and the mycelium too, but without the grain, has so much value compared to just grinding up the grain that the mycelium has been growing on. Because then you get like 60 or 70% grain, I think, in what you think is a mushroom supplement. Been researching that a lot recently, because we do really want to get into that sphere and partner with people, or kind of even go out on our own and make some supplements, because there's lots of studies coming out of Japan, for example, of the benefits of lion's mane for brain health and helping with plaque, with Alzheimer's, or even oyster mushrooms with their antioxidant abilities to stop free radicals in our bodies and help with heart health and cardiovascular health. So it's not just like a great food source that grows fast and it's all fancy and beautiful. It also has these actual like real life implications that, of course, big pharma don't necessarily want to acknowledge.
Exactly.
So it is like kind of a delicate dance. It's
Yeah.
like we want people to understand the value of these, but we don't want to be stomped on.
Yeah.
And we want to continue to spread the message. So
Yeah. And just try not to be, again, like higher than thou atmosphere either. I don't want to pretend that all the answers are just locked up in mushrooms, but a lot of them are.
Yeah.
So there's a
Exactly.
lot.
Yeah.
My partner had breast cancer 5 years ago. And
sorry to hear that.
it's the best thing that ever happened to us. And I'm not even kidding.
Wow.
Wow.
So it is or it's not. We get to make that decision. But
True.
she used lion's mane
Wow.
mushrooms.
I love hearing
We
that.
did a million natural things. We also did chemo, but got out of that as quickly as possible. And so
Wow.
she's great. 5
Yeah.
years later, she's so healthy.
That's amazing.
We're happy. It's wonderful. Yeah.
Aw.
So
That's good.
I love hearing that.
And I have a company that I would like to connect y'all with. Someone
Please,
who might be a
yes.
customer.
Cool. That's
Yeah.
great. Yeah. One of the things when it comes to dehydrating too, though, is that a lot of the time the price is the problem, and the price is that way because of the grain issue that she was describing. Is it's very cheap to produce something that's subpar,
Mhm.
and if
Mhm.
subpar is par for the course, then that's just what the price is going to
Exactly.
be.
Yeah.
So I think we're just kind of sitting on that program. And yeah, so to cap off what it's like to run a place like this, it's honestly it's a lot right now. It's a ton. I'm not going to lie to you, but I think that I genuinely would not really want to be doing anything any different, but it does make me excited for when this starts to kind of be maintained by the crew that we have here, and that we can start to do. I mean, I already am. I'm sitting here right now, able to do a little more outside of just the daily grind,
Yep.
and
Yeah.
and start to plug in the other pieces.
Speaking of the grind, the grain that y'all are using, can y'all talk a little bit about what you've chosen and why? And
Yeah. So it just so happens really that Milo or sorghum is a really popular grain that's become part of the mushroom industry for whatever reason. I'm not sure why it has become popular nationally, but for Texas, it's a grain that grows really easily in dryland farming. And it has gluten-free properties too, so people make it into flour. That's
Mhm.
not really why we grow it, but it's definitely an added element because rye and barley are the more popular grains historically for mushroom cultivation. But yeah, Milo or sorghum, I'll just call it Milo, is what we use. And we have the land where we are talking about potentially growing industrial hemp is located next to a grain farmer that's a very old family in farming. Not just that, they do all the kind of staples, but I just took a really I'm still kind of like, wow, I'm realizing that I really like Milo. I just want to
Mhm.
investigate it more. It's something that grows really easily. It's like it's kind of overlooked, and it's really effective for this industry specifically, but yeah, I think there's just more to that story that I'm kind of trying to figure out and talk to the older farmers and figure out how it works. And it's a link to conventional farming that I think
Mhm.
is
Yeah,
there's a door there,
I agree
and I'm not sure what is on the other side, but
because
yeah,
that is familiar to a lot of farmers.
Yeah.
yeah, yeah,
So that when I heard y'all use Milo, it made me so excited. So
yeah,
is your neighbor your supplier?
right, yep,
See,
correct,
and I love that too,
me too.
because that is just that supporting local
Yeah.
agriculture and just creating the local economy.
Yes.
yeah. We did a project for bioremediation that required a ton of that grain, and we had been buying Milo from Callahan's, and we still supplement sometimes with different suppliers, but whenever we buy a ton of grain, it was really exciting to be able to get our own grain cart with an auger and
Yeah.
go up to his land and just shoot the breeze with him. And I think that's really where I think maybe a cultural disconnect between fungal growers and old time farmers could be bridged.
Yes. Yes.
That's really,
Yeah.
yeah.
That's an important one. And then also just this education of the difference between medical hemp and industrial hemp. And,
Right.
Mhm.
Right.
we're not asking you to become pot farmers.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a big one. I mean, yeah, he was always like, I would describe to him what we were doing with the grain, and I didn't know if for some reason he would just kind of be one of those hard nosed people that was like, oh, well, I don't want to be any part of that.
Yeah.
But he wasn't at all. He was just like, oh, okay, that's interesting. You
I don't care
know?
what you do with it
Yeah.
after I
Yeah.
sell it.
And then as I got further and further into it, I think he saw like we were buying 16,000 pounds of grain or something like that. I don't know how much did we buy? It was something
A
like
lot.
that.
We
It was
went multiple
32,000
times.
pounds of grain
Yeah.
over
Wow.
a month or two. And I think he was just like, okay, this is for
Okay.
real. Like,
Yes.
they're not just over there,
Yeah.
growing in their basement. Like, this is some
Right.
real stuff. And yeah, I'm still excited to cultivate that relationship. And I think maybe even industrial hemp is part of that bridge into
Yeah.
that world,
Yeah.
starting to learn how to run combines and different pieces of equipment that I only vaguely know about.
There's so many similarities, I think, between hemp and fungus, though, where when a lot of times my experience when I tell someone that I work at a gourmet mushroom company, they immediately go to psychedelics or psychotropics. And
Mhm.
I think with hemp, it's probably something I'll see a lot. And so there's a lot of room for education in that area of like, not the war on drugs. There's so many other ways to use these
Exactly.
products, and educating people in that and showing them, like we said, seeing is believing. I think we've talked in the past and before about hemp versus paper products. And I actually was thinking earlier, do y'all have any facts on water usage for creating hemp as a textile or creating hemp as a I don't want to say paper product, but I don't know what the term would be.
Yeah.
Because, cotton and fashion, while cotton is amazing, fashion is one of the largest polluters. And because of the water and all the cycles that they go through. So I was sort of curious
Well,
about that.
it's funny that you say that because there is a woman that attends the USDA NRCS state technical committee meetings with us, and she represents the cotton lobby, I would say,
Hmm.
but she also grows hemp. And,
Yeah.
she's like, we need to stop lying to people that hemp doesn't require a lot of water
Hmm.
because it
I
does.
figured it might.
And I will say that right now, yes, we are growing hemp seed that is, its country of origin is far, far, far away.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And so I believe that in a couple of years, when we have access to this seed that, yes, it's been genetically modified to be heat and drought resistant, then we will be able to back off some on the water
Yeah.
use. But right now, our experience as dryland farmers was this is way too stressful for this plant.
Yeah.
Hmm.
And, we can plant it earlier, but in essence, it does require more water than what the
But for
folklore might
processing
say.
Hmm.
I would
after,
like to say it doesn't require more water, it requires better soil.
I like
Because in
that.
both of the places that
True.
we grew in, if the soil had been better, would have been just fine.
It's a very good point.
That is a great point. We assume that it would have
Exactly.
grown just fine. We don't know
If
for a
they
fact,
had
but yes,
Right.
of course we need it.
mycelial
Yes.
networks
Yes.
Yeah.
in the
Yes.
soil.
And of course, until we can have biology that can survive in our soil, like
Yeah.
we have to take
Yeah.
these baby steps. And that's why we're like, okay, we had a failed crop. We need to give this a full year of planting a cover
Yes.
crop, rethinking how we're going to do it, crimping instead of plowing, these sorts of
Yeah.
things. So, yeah, it will make a difference. But all in all, right now, it does take a little more water.
But in terms
And
of processing, sorry, I didn't
oh
mean
no,
to
you're
cut.
fine. Go.
Do you have any data on that, like after it's been harvested versus like cotton, for example, because of all the washing and the chemical treatments? I'm a little ignorant in that sphere, but
Yeah, I don't know. I bet that information does exist.
Mhm.
I will say that right now, because the cotton industry is so old,
Yeah.
the different fiber links, you can get exactly what you want
Hmm.
Wow.
with cotton right
Yeah.
now. And that's one of the things that's having to be developed right now in
Mhm.
the genetics for industrial hemp is this marker for fiber length and things like that.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I feel like the way hemp is used, there's probably not going through a bleaching process or whatever, but who knows? Who knows?
Yeah.
But I will
It's exciting, though.
definitely
That would
do
be a
some homework
Panda
on that.
Yeah.
Biotech
And
question.
yeah. And well, because Panda Biotech that's in Wichita Falls, Texas, they sign contracts with farmers
Mhm.
like, okay, you're going to plant this. And they have the pay to grow program that y'all learned about in our
Yes.
session.
Uh-huh.
But then they have the supply chain completed because now they're out saying, okay, I know I'm going to have this feedstock coming in. So now I can go ahead and pre-sell this fiber
Yeah.
to who knows, Gap Inc. or
Yeah.
Levi's or whoever. And at the ribbon cutting ceremony, the ribbon that they cut was denim made
Oh.
of hemp.
That's awesome.
So, and we know that they use methylene blue to dye denim, which is way better than a bleaching process. So, so who knows? I am just holding a vision that it is more earth friendly to work
Yeah.
with hemp than cotton. But, it's not like we're trying to put cotton out of business,
No, it's
but it's like, let's
Yeah.
diversify.
Can we have one other natural
I like
fiber
cotton,
to make
Yeah.
clothes,
but
please?
no polyester, please.
Yeah.
Exactly. This is what
Yeah.
like natural fibers.
Yes,
Like
natural
we
fibers.
back off on the plastic.
Yeah.
I'm
I've-
already eating a credit card a month, so let's.
Yeah, there's all kinds of different things that I think like everyone wants the thing that they're getting into to be the answer in all respects, but I mean like it never is. Like when it's a combination of everything. Like I was openly trying to stoke this conversation with the mycology community at UT when I had that convention, and I was honestly just like knee deep in this move, and I was going to do this convention, and to me, I think I wanted to come out hot. I was just feeling sassy, and
I like
everybody
it.
was everybody was just always very happy go lucky, and I'm scaling this thing, and it's hard, and I just wanted to have a real conversation, and that's all I had to say. It really, I wasn't in the mood
Yeah.
to pat people on the back and stuff, or pat myself on the back, or anything. I was like, this can be so wasteful.
Yeah.
The mission is great. The mission is amazing, but this can be wasteful if we're not responsible. So along the way of scaling this thing, if money is our focus, then we can easily be very wasteful. But I just wanted to raise the alarm with everybody in that community. Like, hey, if I think everyone here wants this to be what it could be. So let's focus on things like natural building where we build,
Yeah.
or let's focus on working on a hemp plastic bag that we grow our mushrooms in.
Love
Yeah.
that.
Love
Like
it.
Yeah.
the different plastic pellets that were able to be made into the resin pellets that were able to be made into plastics. I've done a little further research after seeing y'all's seminar, and it's totally possible. It's just not necessarily, there's not an economic incentive for it yet.
Right.
But maybe the mushroom industry is the economic incentive for that, because we use so many medical products. We have to be sterile.
Yeah.
It's something we have to lean on.
Yeah.
But maybe it's up to us to change that. And so if we're aware of it, we just pat ourselves on the back all the time. We have to be like, okay, let's change the thing that we're leaning on, which is not
Yes.
what we want to do. So I think like when it comes to water with hemp, it's like until we have the dryland farming seed, water it. Make sure that it works well. And I'm on a rant, but genetic farming is if you're going to genetically modify something, it has a lot of negativity attached to it. And in some ways it can be negative for sure. I mean, if it's monocropped, if it's like monocropping is not the best way to do things. But
Exactly.
if your purpose is to use it as a soil amender and the hemp specifically as something that's a bioremediative, cost-effective, sustainable, or renewable way of conducting business and
tool.
energy
Right.
Yeah.
tool, then that's a great tool to do it. And I think like when genetically modified things, there's a lot of ways to genetically modify something. It doesn't
Exactly.
have to be this very negative thing.
Gene splicing.
Yeah, like when we channel the genetics of certain phenotypes of a kind of fungus, we are essentially intervening in
Yes.
the way that it grows. You're intervening in the way that a tomato plant grows when
Oh yeah.
when you prune it or you train it or you continue to go year after year to get its seed to be more resilient to the soil type that you're in. So it just depends what tier of genetic modification you're
I like that.
talking
It
about.
actually just sparked really quick in one of y'all's past episodes when you were speaking with that older gentleman farmer. He talked about how he tried to immediately go cold turkey with no fertilizer.
Mhm.
And it's like when you really think about what that means, it's like the plants have selected themselves to be dependent on those fertilizers. And so it's really interesting when Josh talks about what genetically modifying really means. It could just be selecting for the stronger genetics. It doesn't have to be using CRISPR-Cas9,
Exactly.
to
Yeah.
go in there and cut things up.
Well, and also it is, we're looking for the markers that are best suited for our conditions.
Mhm.
And we're using this stuff for building materials, for, fuel, for manufacturing. So it's not like I'm feeding this
Exactly.
to someone.
Yeah.
And so for me, that's when I'm like, yeah, we have science and technology to assist us. It's just another piece of the team.
Yeah.
But
Yes.
when you have people that are doing it and using this information responsibly, then we know it's for the betterment of what we're trying to accomplish.
Mhm.
Mhm. Definitely.
You know, I had to reconcile that in my head because we have such a deep-seated idea of what it is, just like people have a deep-seated idea of what hemp is or what mushrooms
Yeah.
are,
Exactly.
you know,
Exactly.
so it's just
Oh.
part of it.
Cool. So when are we tilling up the ground? And like, we don't need to till anything. Right when I said that, she's like, "We're not. We're not doing that."
Start
started
throwing those
shaking.
mushrooms out there.
No, yeah. I think the combination of just a cover of blocks. When I say blocks, I guess to the listeners that might be vague, I mean the spent substrate, myceliated sawdust block on the ground. That is kind of a weed pressure antidote, you
Mhm.
know,
Mm-hmm.
and soil moisture retention buffer.
Yeah.
And then
Uh,
hyphae naturally tills as it grows in, like the worms.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I'm excited for
Well,
that.
that'll be a good workout.
Oh,
Just
yeah.
stay in the back of the truck and throw them
Yeah.
out.
Sling
Yeah.
'em.
Be sure to switch so you don't
Slinging
wake
blocks.
up sore.
We need chickens or something to spread
Yeah.
them out.
Yeah, we can make that happen.
Yeah, we can.
So we sent y'all all the stuff about getting your farm number and
Yes.
how to get your hemp license and all that good stuff.
Mhm.
So we just have to decide what cover crops we're going to get out there this
Yeah.
fall.
Yeah, yeah, that's still something I need to. I sent a soft business idea to my pops because I kind of want to just let them know that I know what I'm talking about. I mean, I can kind of use it's like a recreational side of agricultural land.
Mhm.
I can kind of do what I want, but with that specific property, until there's something isolated under our own wing, I'm gonna just cross check
Right.
with what we can do. But
Well, I like it. And it's also telling him I'm serious about this.
Yeah.
mhm, yeah, yeah. I mean, definitely dead serious about it. So yeah, all the blocks that we take out of here are definitely available for that. And that brings me to, if there are like listeners that want access to mushroom grow blocks, believe me, I know it's a thing. Everybody wants that, and it's like we want them too, though. To be honest, there's not enough right now for. I kind of want to experiment with them,
Mhm.
but that doesn't mean that we're going to be like super selfish. Like
Mhm.
if people want to come up and grab like 20 or 30 or even 50, like that works. But the whole truckloads for now I would love to allocate towards a concerted effort and a project
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
I like
can
it.
show some results, and then we can
Mhm.
always.
And also because, this has to be mutually beneficial. So we'll make sure in the show notes to put a link and maybe people give you their email address
Mhm.
and then you could put them on the list.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that way they can learn more about what y'all are doing and potentially earn access to
Yeah.
the used substrate.
Totally.
Yes.
Yeah. I think
Or buy a block
right.
or some mushrooms
Yeah.
and get
Yeah. Yeah. No. If listeners would like to come get a few blocks and just experiment with it, like,
Yeah.
give us an email. Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely.
Tell you our super secret location.
Yeah. Yeah. Just
Need
just
to complete a
don't
riddle.
come to my house or something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. So if people want to cook with Fallen Oak Mycology mushrooms, where do they shop to find your products? Or do y'all do direct to consumer stuff or just straight through the grocers?
We're going to work on direct to consumer. This move into this facility is tying up a lot of hands, but Zahia's working really hard on getting us into. So why don't you?
Yeah. Well, we've been in a few farmers markets and we do want to do that more consistently. Just going back to the show and telling community outreach and getting people excited and allowing it direct to consumer. We are currently, the bulk mushroom provider for Essential Market. So if you see the large bulk mushrooms in their
Sweet.
baskets, those are ours.
Nice.
Only the beautiful ones, though.
Yeah, the bad ones are not ours.
Yeah, we don't know those. No, I'm just kidding. And that kind of goes back to the storage and, they should be kept cool and dry. But I am hitting the pavement trying to get us into some restaurants because with fungus, it's like people are like, I'll just use a button mushroom. And it's like, there's a lot of areas with the gourmet in terms of using them as not necessarily like a replacement, but opening new areas of like umami and texture. And I love to cook. And so I feel like there are ways to treat them as their own beautiful ingredient. And I've been getting them in the hands of chefs and allowing them to play around with them. But like Josh and I mentioned in the beginning, we were born and raised in Austin. It's a little disheartening how much our local restaurants have become corporatized. So it's kind of like getting through the door has been a fun journey. And I know, actually, I'm not going to say I think, I know that once one chef is like dead set on having those, they're all going to get jealous of each other. And they're going to be like, I need that king trumpet oyster, or I need that the black pearls they're delicious. You know, they're like spicy and peppery, but have that like delicious mushroom texture. And I think getting them into the hands of people who know how to properly prepare them and then show everyone else. I'll admit, I hated mushrooms until I was in college. My mom has always loved them. And then one day I was like, wait, these are amazing.
Exactly.
And now I'm like having access to all these beautiful gourmet varieties and even the ability to scale up other ones that we don't currently, have offered. But all that to say, I'm working on it. We're in the works with some smaller grocery chains and some restaurants, and they're in people's hands. It's convincing the manager who doesn't cook that like this is a worthwhile buy, And of course, as we scale, we can work on those numbers with people. I think compared to a portobello or a baby bella at the grocery store, it kind of doesn't make sense until you see the value, and so many different reasons, not just the taste or the nutritional value, but also, y'all know ratatouille. We eat with our eyes,
Yeah.
I always think about Remy, his name is Remy, Remy the rat with his little ratatouille dish, and how it's like, I think that they're really beautiful. It just can be kind of scary to take that new leap for people, especially when they're established with their supply chains and customers.
Well, I have a couple of ideas. We'll talk about it in a
Yes,
minute.
please.
Yes.
Cool.
And if you're in the Central Texas area, go to your grocery store and request Fallen Oak Mycology.
Please do.
Yeah, there's also just keep in mind what we do mostly is wholesale, so we white label, which is a term for saying basically we're comfortable with putting our mushrooms into other brands' packaging too.
Sweet.
So that's a
yeah.
lot of other brands you're going to find for gourmet mushrooms are people that we are either are selling mushrooms to or are courting.
Yes.
So
Perfect.
yeah, they're pretty ubiquitous right now around Central Market and Whole Foods.
I firmly believe in our genetics, though, and I do believe that we have some really beautiful mushrooms on the market. So, like I said, if they're pretty, they're probably ours.
You're the right person doing sales.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I want to talk, and this is premature, I know. We'll talk about this on another episode down the road, but I just want people to know that this recycling with mushrooms is a real thing and it is viable. And I know people that are freaked out about what's going on in the world and understanding that the recycling industry right now is a total sham. But nature does have a solution. And, this is on the back burner for y'all now, but that's something that you're also passionate about that I really love is that you're going to help heal the plastic problem in the world.
Yes.
Yeah, that's a huge one. That's like it's daunting. I want to be more engaged with it. There's several different numbers of plastic. There's several different types of plastic. Breaking down hydrocarbon, the questions are, exactly which species. We have several species that we can work with and tap and analyze. That's definitely something on the horizon. I think it's just it's daunting, to be honest. There's a lot of ways to look at it. It's like in a landfill, you have all different types of plastics mixed up together, and they're mixed with like baby diapers, and then with like I don't know if you've gone to the landfill. I'm just visioning what I've stomped into, and I got out of my truck at the landfill, and it's pretty grim.
Yeah.
But yeah, all of that is a challenge because it's so mixed together. And the development of a product that's actually that you could stand behind is difficult, but it's definitely not impossible whatsoever. It's coming, and I have a feeling we're not the only people talking about it. I know we're not. I hope for that solution to come. I definitely hope to be a part of it. It's in its infancy, but I do know that there are floor cleaners, there are different types of things that are in the industrial world right now that are pretty effective, but I think they can be a lot better.
Yeah.
That use biology to break down the same types of bonds that hold plastics together, which are hydrocarbon bonds. So yeah, lots of work to be done there.
Mhm.
And honestly, a field that I think is intimidating, because when you anytime you do anything with the juggernaut of the oil industry, it's just
Mhm.
Yeah.
it's frankly kind of scary. So
Well, and that's the thing. We have to crush all of these systems, or they're already crumbling. So let them just
Yeah.
go ahead and fall apart. And
Yeah.
then we rebuild something that's
Don't interrupt while they're destroying themselves.
Right.
We'll just watch it happen and then
Yeah.
pick up the pieces that we want and move forward with
yeah,
that.
that's where I think hemp is a great thing. It's more of a look at it's a thing that is creative rather
Mhm.
than destructive.
Right.
And if we can start to replace elements, create a safety net for when that crumbles, there's something
Absolutely.
Yes.
there. And then
Absolutely.
assist the cleanup
Mhm.
with
Mhm.
fungus.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So,
Yeah.
I think attacking it that way is the best way to do it.
I love it. Now, before we wrap, is there anything that we didn't talk about that you think's important to mention to kind of round out the conversation?
Hmm.
I think when you cook mushrooms, just get your pan really, really hot and
Yes.
throw them in there and let them sweat out the moisture, and
Please.
then add oil and garlic.
Yeah.
It's very simple. A lot of
Uh-huh.
people are so daunted by it. Just throw them in the pan when it's really hot.
You'll get a beautiful texture that way.
I love it.
Well,
Believe
I
it or
love
not,
that.
that's one of the most
great
common things we have to
information.
talk
That's a
about.
hot tip. Now, another thing then, what is the exact proper way to clean a mushroom before you throw it into that hot pan?
Good question. Because they do absorb moisture. So
Brush them off.
yeah, that's pretty much it.
That's
No
what I
visible
do.
dirt.
Okay, that's what I do. I just take a paper towel and I just wipe them
Yeah.
off.
Yeah. When they come from a place like this is one of the cleanest agricultural places you're going to find.
Yes, we've had agents tell us that very impressed by how clean our
Excellent.
farm
Yeah,
is.
it's very difficult to clean mushrooms, to be
Mhm.
honest with you, but it's also pretty much unnecessary. There's nothing that we
Yeah.
spray on them.
Yeah.
They're picked up with people with gloves that have isopropyl alcohol that have sterilized their
Mhm.
gloves.
And they're wearing respirators and
Yeah,
their
it's-
hair nets and
It's one of the cleaner. If you found substrate on them, that substrate was sterilized
Mhm.
prior to them growing.
yeah.
It's not. Believe it or not, it's not manure.
Mhm.
These mushrooms are all saprophytic. They grow on sawdust, so
Yeah.
there's no manure. Yeah.
All
And
right.
I think instead of washing them, you could use that moisture absorbing ability to have it absorb different sauces and things. So
Agreed.
yeah.
I like how you.
Yeah.
I like
know.
it.
That was a very cute look. All right.
Thanks.
Y'all, thank you so much. This was such a great conversation. Many more to come.
Yes.
And yes, we're very excited to collaborate with y'all.
We're excited. Thank you for
Yeah, I
having
appreciate
us.
it very much. Thanks a
Yeah.
lot for listening to
Mhm.
everybody.
Yes, thanks everyone.
Take care.
Connect with the Soil Sisters at txsoilsisters.co. Submit questions, guest or show ideas, and sponsorship inquiries. The Soil Sisters podcast was created and produced by Joanna Nuding. Editing and sound design are in the capable hands of the PodConnects Podcast Network.